Let's talk to Blake Morgan right here, who covers Tennessee recruiting for SECCountry.com. I'll give Blake some credit. He was on record this morning saying that he thought the ultimate decision for Wanya Morris, the four-star offensive lineman, would be to choose the Tennessee Vols. That's exactly what has happened. Blake, as we say good evening to you, and thanks for being with us here on this very special SEC Country Live presentation. Let me start with a simple, basic question. What was it about Jeremy Pruitt? What was it about the Vols that sold Wanya Morris?
You know, it was really the relationships. I think that's what a lot of it came down to, and the path to early playing time. You know, that's something that Pruitt pushed a lot for on the National Signing Day back in February. And, you know, they came up short. They whiffed on a lot of these top guys. It's kind of the sentiment was, well, give Pruitt some more time. Give him some time to make these relationships count. Give him some time to connect with these guys. And he's going to be able to land them. And that's exactly what you saw today. You know, Morris, like I've mentioned, he's a top 50 guy in 247 composite. ESPN last week ranked him as the number 9 or number 10 prospect in the country. So, you know, I mean, he's a big-time guy that's going to come in and probably play immediately. So I think it was the fact that Will Friend, the offensive line coach, was able to connect with him so well from the very beginning. Jeremy Pruitt just knows how to push the right buttons at the right time with these recruits, as we've seen time and time again while he was at Alabama. And then, yeah, just, I mean, you know, the offensive line doesn't have a lot of depth and honestly is missing talent in a lot of different areas. And Wanya's going to be able to walk in and probably play pretty early on.
Blake, I love what you said about relationships. I think that's the biggest thing coming from some of these recruits nowadays. We've heard recruits say, hey, I can chop it up with Jeremy Pruitt. He's a guy that I can really look to as a friend. Is that something you see continuing as a trend moving forward with Jeremy Pruitt and this regime at Tennessee? And how much is that different from what you saw out of the previous guys in Butch Jones?
Yeah, you know, it's just a whole different feel with Pruitt. And, you know, and just the way the guys talk about him is, you know, Butch Jones was, you know, he put on this whole, it was just this big show at all times, right? You know, and it worked for a while, and then it kind of came crashing down and fell off. But Pruitt's not like that at all. I mean, you know, he's going to come in and he's just going to straight up say, like, hey, I like the way that, you know, you seal this defender. You know, I think you'll be able to come in and do that, but you need to get better at this. You need to get better at that. And, you know, but we want you. You know, he's just straight up with all these guys. And I think a lot of coaches they just aren't as real as Pruitt. And, you know, Pruitt, we found that out when he somewhat called out the fans, but definitely called out the players in the orange and white game when he was like, you know, they just didn't show up. He is not going to mix his words. I mean, he comes straight out of that Alabama camp where he's going to say what's on his mind, and he's not going to hold any punches. And I think that's pretty refreshing to a lot of these guys that, you know, get kind of into the gimmicky kind of stuff with some of these coaches that, you know, these elite prospects just like being talked to like a normal guy and being told, like, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z to come here, and if you do that, I can get you to the NFL.
There's been some somewhat tumultuous stories involving the Tennessee offensive line over the last year or so. If you want to go back to the class of 2018, a 5-star offensive lineman, Cade Mays, from Knoxville, chooses not to be a part of the Vols program. Trey Smith, who almost everyone would agree had a splendid freshman season. Right now, his health status is very uncertain, up in the air in terms of his availability for 2018. Adding Wanya Morris, how much is this going to do to sort of make Tennessee fans feel about the miss with Mays in recruiting and the uncertainty surrounding Trey Smith?
Well, I think Tennessee fans are going to feel a lot better about it. You know, and that's going to be my recruiting notebook that's going to go live in, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes on SEC Country, so you can read a little bit more about it. Is that, you know, Tennessee missed out on a lot of these guys. They had Quay Walker pick up the Tennessee hat and then throw it away after they were leading for about a month. You had Elijah Griffin, the cornerback from USC, from Southern California, commit to USC when, you know, he was basically saying Tennessee was the team to beat just a few weeks before that. And it was kind of deflating to the fan base that, you know, they were in on so many guys and then you just came up short. This proves Pruitt can go in and get some of the top guys that he targets, because he is going to target the top guys in the entire country. And then, yeah, on the offensive line, I mean, you know, this sets up a solid core. You know, Morris is going to join 4-star legacy recruit Jackson Lampley, who's a guard from Nashville. And, all of a sudden, you kind of have the left side of the line's future set up pretty well. Tennessee doesn't have a quarterback yet. They've slow played that position. Well, now you're selling like, hey, you come to Tennessee, your blind side is going to be Wanya Morris and Jackson Lampley, 2 4-star guys, and Morris might even be a 5-star by the time it's done. All of a sudden, that's pretty appealing. All of a sudden, Tennessee, who doesn't have a running back commit, they're coming into some of the best running backs in the country and saying, hey, you're going to have a stout offensive line to run behind for 4 years if you choose Tennessee. And that's the first tangible, real thing Pruitt's had to really sell, because to this point it's just been his vision, his ability to get people to the NFL, but that was always at other schools. So, he's finally starting to have something and some momentum that he can sell to these recruits on the recruiting trail.
Let me go back to a subject that you touched on a couple of minutes ago. Will Friend is the offensive line coach here at Tennessee, knows the SEC well, but had been out of the South for a couple of years. How much credit is Friend going to get for ultimately landing Morris here at Tennessee? How much responsibility does he get for this commitment in your mind?
I think he should get a lot of the responsibility. I don't know how much credit he'll get because, he's not really seen as kind of the big, talkative guy, on the recruiting trail. David Johnson, the wide receiver coach, gets, more recognition. Terry Fair, because he's former Vol, they get talked about a bit more. But Will Friend, I've written it a few times. I think he is one of the most underrated recruiters on this staff for Tennessee. It's because he came in a matter of 10 days, was able to swing a commitment from Jerome Carvin, who's probably going to be a starting guard for Tennessee this season. He came in and was able to secure Jackson Lampley. Now, Lampley was probably going to come to Tennessee if, Brandon, if you were the coach, he was probably going to still come to Tennessee and play for you.
Sure.
But, he was able to secure that commitment, and then he was able to talk with Wanya, build that relationship, and have him come here. I remember talking to Jerome Carvin about 2 days after Will Friend was hired and on the recruiting trail. And Carvin was like, man, I had like a 10-minute phone call with him, and you would not believe how much he knows about coaching the offensive line and what it takes to get to the NFL. And I was like, you could tell that in a 10-minute phone call? And he goes, it was unbelievable. And every single recruit I've talked to since then comes away as impressed that Will Friend just knows the game of football and knows how to get you to the next level.
So, Blake, last thing for you. Obviously, when a program attracts a 4-star recruit, there's always the thought of, okay, who's next? And do you think that Wanya Morris now has a chance to sort of build that momentum for Tennessee's 2019 class? Do more dominoes now topple because Morris is in the fold?
Absolutely. And, I think this is going to have a reverberating effect where a lot more top guys that have given some thought to Tennessee are now going to consider it more seriously. Wanya, he tweeted on April 22nd, he said, somebody's got to be the first one to do something. And if you want to read pretty deep into that, I think it meant he's got to be the first big-time guy to commit to Tennessee, in a high-stakes recruiting battle. So, look for Jalen Curry, the wide receiver from down in Texas, who's just had an official visit to Tennessee, big-time 4-star guy. He's seriously considering Tennessee now, especially with Morris in the fold. Same with Chris Bogle, who I don't think he thought he was going to enjoy Tennessee as much on his official visit 2 weeks ago, but he came away loving it as well. So they're both two guys to watch moving forward. Sean Brown is a tight end from down in Georgia who's committing on May 12th. I think he's going to choose the ball. I think Rommel Keaton, a guy from Marietta, is committing on May 16th. I like where the ball stands with him as well. And then all of a sudden, Tennessee looks like one of the hottest recruiting teams heading into the summer, and that's a great place to be if you're Pruitt in the ball.
Blake Morgan, that's well said. We appreciate your time. We'll look forward to reading a lot more from you at SECCountry.com in the days ahead. Nobody knows Vols recruiting better than you, and thanks for spending some of that time with us this evening.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.